What's shaking, BookTube? My name's Cam and welcome back to another video, another writing tip video. Oh yeah, baby, it's another writing tip video, another writing cliches to avoid. We've done fantasy, we've done romance, and today we're doing sci-fi. Roll the intro. I just want to say something really quick before I get into it, because something I've noticed happens a little bit on the other writing cliches to avoid videos is that some people get a bit defensive, and I realize that's an inherent side effect of creating content on the internet. But I feel like I do still want to take a moment just to say something really quickly that I really shouldn't have to. And that is that writing cliches, or cliches in general, can be subjective. It's true. What some people might feel is being used too much, other people might not share that view. It happens. Let it go. And the reason I'm saying this now is because this video, more than the other ones, I'm kind of going into blind. I don't really read a whole lot of sci-fi, and I sure as hell don't write sci-fi. But I can still make this video because I have access to a little something called
the internet.
Through the power of
the internet,
I have the ability to see what the majority of people reading sci-fi feel is a trope, is a cliche, and that's what I'll be sharing with you today. So yeah, just don't feel like you have to rush to the defense of any of these writing devices that I'm about to mention. They're not even necessarily bad things, they're just used quite a lot, and maybe they're used quite a lot because they're good things, although maybe not. Anyway, that's the only time I'm ever going to do some kind of disclaimer in these writing cliches to avoid videos, so fuck it. The first one I'm going to mention is one that will be kind of hard to disagree with because it's quite obviously a trope or a cliche, although maybe for good reason. It's something that, if you're a fan of sci-fi, you've definitely heard of, and that is the cliche of humanoid aliens. Aliens that by all means seem to be human, except they might have different colored skin. They look like humans, and if they look different, it'll be usually just one small characteristic, like some kind of weird tattoo scarring on their face. I think the reason this frustrates a lot of people is because when you're working with something like aliens and literally the extents of the galaxy, you have a lot of creative freedom there, and I guess some people just feel like you're not tapping into the potential. These aliens could pretty much look like anything. The aliens could look like pretty much anything at all, but yeah, they just look like humans. Maybe a human that's, I don't know, eaten some of Willy Wonka's candy. The defense for this trope or this cliche is that it gives us gives us the audience, who happen to be humans, the ability to feel like we can relate a bit more to these characters. And my counterpoint to that would be that we can relate more with a personality or characteristics or mannerisms, rather than just the physical appearance. You can have aliens that look like aliens that we can still kind of relate to if they share some of the same personality traits. Some of the same kind of human method of thinking. Identifying a problem, creating a solution, that sort of thing. Next up is crystals as a power source. If there is some kind of space or sci-fi thing, usually it will be powered by crystals. In some instances, even a whole planet. Their machinery will be powered by crystals. The science behind how crystals are powering this stuff is usually quite vague, but they always boil down to being some sort of gem. And further to that, the crystal will usually be a source of unlimited power, usually just for convenience sake. The fix for that is an easy one, but a pretty boring one. That's just to maybe use some conventional forms of generating energy and electricity. Or if you do want to use some of that creative freedom we spoke about before when you're discussing something like the extent of space, maybe just come up with something completely new that could be used as an energy source. You're talking about things beyond our imagination, so you can invent something. Next up is just really a scene. It's a scene that seems to pop up in a lot of movies and TV shows and books for sci-fi, and you're immediately going to have one version of this in particular come to mind when I say it. And that is a bar where all of the aliens come to be rowdy. It's usually where you'll find the mercenary outlaw hero. Just a super rowdy bar, dirty bar, where all of these different races of alien come together and share one common thing that seems to stretch across the expanse of the universe, and that is getting lit, bruh. We so lit. There's so many other different ways you could introduce a character who fits into the profile of someone who would go to a rowdy bar. There's a lot of different activities they could be doing in our extent of human knowledge, not even introducing the fact that you're talking about aliens and other planets. Just when you're writing that bar scene into your book to introduce that character, maybe just reconsider it, that's all. Next up is one that has been pointed out to me quite recently, and I never really gave it much thought, but when it was pointed out to me, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that is that in these stories, there always seems to be, especially with Earth, the planets seem to have one leader, usually called the president of planet Earth or the president of blah blah. It just doesn't seem likely, does it? As a resident of planet Earth, you should know that it is impossible for us to elect one leader to speak for all of us. And hey, maybe with the United Nations, let's say other planets were discovered and we did set up some kind of political system. It's more likely that the United Nations would appoint some kind of speaker to speak for all of them as a whole, but it wouldn't be one leader. And I doubt it would be one leader for planets with even higher populations, and for aliens. Who knows if alien politics would come down to something as simple as democracy or dictatorship. This seems to happen a lot, that there's always one president. If you are going to have a political sci-fi and introduce some kind of system of government, maybe just make it a bit more akin to what we're used to as humans, and that is that each different region would be separated and each different region would have their own kind of leaders. Maybe some of those leaders are elected, some of those leaders took power, who knows? Just be a bit more diverse with it, a bit more three-dimensional. You can be more three-dimensional with your characters, just as you can be more three-dimensional with your system of government. God, politics is definitely not something I wanted to discuss in a writing tip video. Thank God that is done. The very last cliche usually happens at the end of the book, at the climax, when the world is overrun by aliens, or the world is overrun by AI-controlled robots. Basically, there is too many for them to conceivably win. Even if they were to beat the big bad boss, they would still have all of these minions to deal with, and it just doesn't seem possible. Well, not a problem. No, sir, because if you beat the big bad boss, all of the minions die. And I won't say for no reason, because they do usually give a reason as to why this happens in the books and the stories. But should it? This just comes down to being one of those things that's a bit too convenient. Blowing up the mothership and having all of the robots power down is just a bit nah. The battle could continue a little bit after you beat the big bad boss. Maybe you don't have to talk about the battle afterwards because the climax has already happened, but you could refer back to it. Let's say you beat the big bad boss, and then you cut to, I don't know, a month later or something, and you have the character talking about how they still had a bit of fighting left to do. I don't know, just an idea. Anyway, that's it. That's 5 writing cliches you should try to avoid, or at least change up a bit when you're writing science fiction. Again, science fiction is far from being my specialty or what I usually work within, but I did more than enough research, which is something I am used to doing. So I'm pretty confident all of these cliches are something that at least the majority of the sci-fi or science fiction audience is kind of sick of seeing. As always, thanks for watching. If you want to, do the thing, follow me on the thing, and I'll see you in the next video. Catch ya.